to kind of piggyback off of this one, Chris from Slack is going to join us to teach us how to optimize our Slack workspaces, not only for ourselves, but for our workspaces as well. So, hi, Chris. So good to have you.
Hi, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Should I just jump straight into it?
All yours.
All right, give me 1 second to share my screen. Let me know if folks can see that okay and can also see me okay. Oh,
All
yes.
good. Yep, all good.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody. Hi, my name is Chris Shi. I am give me 1 second. I use any pronouns, and I'm the director of product management at Slack, looking after accessibility as well as our design systems. I'm a non-binary Chinese American person with short hair, and I'm wearing a thick olive green shirt because it's really cold and windy in New York today for some reason. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all. All right, so today I'm going to talk a little bit. It's going to be a intense 180 from the last session, but I think it's looking at similar issues from the opposite angle. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we approach accessibility at Slack as a team of folks who build a digital tool that is load-bearing for communication for a lot of the organizations that maybe you work at. And then also go over a bunch of the features and accommodations that we built into Slack to make it easier to use for people with disabilities. My hope is that this is useful not only for everybody on the call to learn about these features that might be useful for you or for your colleagues, but also that it paints a little bit of a picture of what it really means to make a digital communication tool accessible. I think oftentimes organizations, when they're thinking about which tool should I choose, we often talk about compliance, right? There are all these checklists that you're supposed to check off. And that is, of course, a really, really important part of digital accessibility. But in the 5 years that I've been doing this work, I think what I've really learned is that it's actually much more complicated than that. It's not just about whether something checks the boxes. You really have to think about how to make your tool work for so many different types of bodies and brains, and not just work, but work efficiently and in a way that works for beginners as well as people who have been using your app for hours and hours and hours. All right. So my team at Slack has a pretty straightforward mandate. We just take Slack's mission, which is to make working life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive, and make sure that it extends to everyone, regardless of how their bodies and brains work. As I just mentioned, within our team, one of the things that we take really seriously is that we think beyond compliance. We don't just want to pass a test that the auditors send. We want to make sure that our product is actually working really well for our users who are living in it day in and day out. To achieve that, my team takes on 3 different sets of responsibilities across the organization. First, we work on our own projects that raise both the ceiling and the floor of accessibility at Slack. So what that means is projects that raise the ceiling unlock new types of support that we can give for assistive technologies or new ways for users to customize their experience to make it work better for them. And I'll go over a bunch of these shortly. Projects that raise the floor make it harder for people at Slack to develop new features that cause accessibility problems. So it sort of makes sure that our minimum level of accessibility across the product goes up. Next up, we also spend a ton of time on partnerships. So my team is just one small team within a much larger org of hundreds of engineers building cool new features for Slack all the time. We spend a lot of time partnering with all those teams so that as they're designing the latest and greatest new thing, they're keeping accessibility in mind and making sure that we're not introducing new problems for folks when those features launch. And finally, despite our best efforts, stuff goes wrong. I think I was telling Greer in the prep talk for this that my biggest pet peeve is when people say that accessibility is easy. It's actually really, really not easy in modern software development. It takes a ton of vigilance, a ton of work, a ton of organizational process, and it's technically very, very challenging. So despite our best efforts, stuff goes wrong all the time. things happen, customers write in and complain. My team is kind of on the front lines of dealing with the toughest problems that arise. And then we also spend a lot of time thinking about how we can prevent new ones from popping up in the future. So when I think about accessibility as the product leader for Slack, thinking about accessibility, there's a lot of different experiences that fall under our consideration. Now, this obviously isn't a comprehensive list of everything, but just within the last year or two, the types of things that we have considered included motion sensitivity, light sensitivity, color blindness, deaf and hard of hearing folks, all kinds of assistive technologies and alternative inputs, including people who only use a keyboard, screen reader users, braille users, eye tracking, voice control, dictation, screen magnification, switch control, dark mode even. And then recently, we've also been trying to think more about how to make Slack work better for neurodivergent users. And so that's people with ADHD and dyslexia, especially pertinent to our tool. So I'm going to go over a few of the features and accommodations that we've worked on over the years that have improved Slack for people with disabilities. I'm going to break these down by disability type, though, of course, many of these features will be helpful for more than one group. And of course, many people experience multiple disabilities. So just take that with a grain of salt. And by the way, as I'm going through this, I'm also keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in and I can either address them in the moment or address them afterwards when I'm done. All right, so for motion sensitive folks, we have two user preferences that may be useful. The first is called tab previews. It allows you to turn off the large floating previews that show up when you hover your mouse over navigation tabs such as activities or DMs. Those are there to create kind of a more frictionless experience for people who just want to take a peek at what's going on somewhere else in their app if they don't want to lose focus. But we've also heard from a ton of users when we were developing that it could be really disruptive or disorienting. And so we made sure that there's a way for people to turn them off if you need. The second is you can pause any animations in Slack to make sure that they don't autoplay. And that includes animated GIFs, all of the fun little animated emojis, as well as in-product animation. And that's something that we synchronize with your operating system's settings. This is something that we take super, super seriously because as I'm always telling all of our teams, it's really rare that you have a software bug that sends someone to the hospital, but this is that category of things. And so if we hear any reports that this setting isn't working as expected, that is like priority -1 for us. Next up, for colorblind users, we follow the general guidelines around not using only color to convey meaning, but we've also introduced themes that are specifically designed to work well for people with tritanopia and protanopia and deuteranopia, which is very common forms of colorblindness. There's also a preference under the accessibility tab to underline all links rather than having them only show up in blue, which is useful for many other groups of users as well. I just have it on because I'm old school and I like when my links are underlined. In 2020, during the pandemic, Slack launched our first audio and video tools. So we have a product called Clips that's like a native in Slack way to record audio and video clips and then also view them. And then we also have Huddles, which is like a lightweight teleconferencing tool. For both of those, we built in captioning as well as a transcript feature for clips that lets you actually jump to a specific point in the video using the transcript. I am not deaf or hard of hearing, but I use this all the time because I don't like watching videos. And so do so many other people. So to me, this is such a great example of something that was built for accessibility, making things better for everyone, right? The curb cut effect. So one thing I will note is we recently made it so that these captions for clips no longer automatically generate as like a cost saving measure. So if you always rely on these captions, please, there is an option that your workspace admin can turn on that ensures that those captions are automatically generated for all uploaded videos. So you can still have a way to make sure you automatically have captions if you need. Otherwise, you can also manually generate them for each video you need them for. But again, if you are deaf or hard of hearing and you rely on this, or if you have auditory processing, anything, talk to your workspace admin and make sure that they flip that on so that you automatically get captions for everything. I really love this feature because I've heard really cool anecdotes of how this enables multimodal communication on teams where there are people with different types of disabilities. So, for example, when someone who's dyslexic is coordinating with somebody who's deaf, they can record a message in video that works better for the dyslexic user, and the transcript means that the deaf user is also able to get the same information. So we love opportunities to present the same information in multiple ways whenever possible. Speaking of dyslexia, this is something we started working on relatively recently that was really exciting. So to help dyslexic users and for me to make dealing with incidents and things like that more fun, our team built a pref that allows people to choose what font they want to use Slack in. And we really prioritize the fonts that research has shown to work better for people with dyslexia. Fun fact, Comic Sans is the most popular typeface that people choose to switch to, which was not what we were expecting. There's a lot more we're excited to do in this area. So if you are dyslexic or have ideas or feedback for us, please reach out. We would love to talk to you. Keyboard accessibility is super important for us to support, not only because it matters to people with motor impairments, but also because all other forms of assistive tech, or most of them, like screen readers, rely on it as an input. So we spend a ton of time trying to make sure that Slack is usable with only the keyboard. We have a little bit of an unorthodox keyboard navigation paradigm where you use F6 to navigate in between the different containers within Slack, and then tab and arrow keys to go within each of those sections as usual. This is an example where that is technically not the most compliant thing to do, but we made that choice based on feedback from our real users who said, hey, it's taking us way too long to get from one part of the app to the other. We need a way to kind of quickly jump back and forth, and also for the things to loop back around so that you can really quickly get to other sections of the screen without just hitting tab 150 times. We also support a lot of keyboard shortcuts to improve efficiency. A couple that I use every day. One is Control K on Windows or Command K on the Mac. Opens up something called the Quick Switcher, which lets you really quickly jump to any channel or view or DM with a user or even another workspace inside Slack. That makes it just so much faster to navigate around. I use it 150 times a day. There's also Alt Shift Down or Option Shift Down on Mac, which jumps you to the next unread channel. So if you're reading one channel and you're like, oh, I have 6 other unread ones I need to catch up on, you can just hit that combination of keys and you're on the next one that needs reading. So again, something else I use a ton every day. You can check out the full list of keyboard shortcuts we support, which is a very long list, by pressing Command and backslash or Control and backslash on Windows. And finally, this is, despite all of our efforts to make the keyboard shortcuts available, to make it possible to navigate around, it's still a lot, right? Like we know that our users are switching in between all these different apps, and memorizing all these keyboard shortcuts is a hassle. Navigating from one part of Slack to another is a hassle. So we introduced a third way to try to make it really easy for keyboard users to have access to what they need, which is these operating system level menus that kind of exist on the top of your screen on Mac, or in the top left part of your screen for Windows. So you can either press Alt on Windows to open that up, or on Mac it's Control F2, and it's the file, edit, view, etc. Everything you really need to do in Slack is in there. So that's another way to really quickly jump to whatever you need. A huge amount of our efforts go towards making Slack better for blind and low vision users. This is by far the hardest, but also the most interesting part of my job. How do you translate these visually rich 2D interfaces? We have a whole design team who spends so much time just making sure everything looks perfect visually. How do we translate all of that into like a linear text-only experience that screen reader users can make sense of. There's a lot that happens there behind the scenes. A lot of it is very technical and I think hard to present about, but I'm happy to talk to it for anyone who's interested. But the most sort of big obvious thing that we do is we support image descriptions or alt text for all uploaded images for either desktop and mobile. And what I'm showing here is actually an exciting new experience that's not quite public yet, but we're hoping to get it out by the end of the year, where users will be able to opt into reminders at either like an individual level, or you could turn this on for your whole workspace. And basically, after you upload an image, you'll automatically get this thing that pops up that prompts you to add the alt text in so you don't forget. We also offer customizations for the screen reader experience. We know that screen reader users have to hear so much just to get the same information that a sighted user is able to skim. So something that we started building on our iOS app and are now building on our desktop app is the ability for screen reader users to customize what order they want to hear the metadata in. So do you really care about like how many reactions this post got, or do you care much more that, you saved it for later or, whatever. So you can actually choose which of those things you want to hear about an individual Slack message and in what order, and then set those on both the mobile and hopefully soon the desktop app. And there's lots more we need to do in terms of fundamentals, but we've also built some nice to haves. These two are keyboard shortcuts. One is Alt and then 0 to 9, and that lets you play back a number of recent messages on your screen reader. And another one is Control Alt S. I forget the Mac equivalent, but you can look it up in the keyboard shortcuts. That one plays a summary of notifications across your workspace so that you can really quickly get a sense of like, how much do I have to catch up on? And finally, one feature that I've been really excited about this year is something that we shipped called Simplified Layout Mode. So originally we built this for people with motor disabilities who use eye tracking software. We wanted to make Slack easier for them by reducing the amount of stuff on the page, make things bigger, make things more spaced out, so that they can much easier like kind of get around. But we also found when we started testing this out that this was super helpful for screen reader users who are also overwhelmed with how much stuff there is on the screen, and also for people with ADHD who really benefit from having fewer visual distractions. So I have always thought that this feature was a really beautiful kind of example of how we can build these accommodations that work well for multiple groups of people at the same time. And it doesn't have to be labeled as an accessibility feature or like a, feature that's targeted towards one disability. It's just a different way of using the product. I end up using this all the time when I'm traveling and I don't have, a huge monitor and I want to make sure Slack is like nice and contained on my laptop screen. So yeah, it's a great example of using accessibility to inspire the way that we think about designing products, and just build these things that are useful for everyone. So that was a whole lot of talking. If anyone has any questions, and if we have a few minutes for questions, please feel free to ask.
So I'm going to make a quick request. If you have questions, pop them in the chat because we are running a couple minutes over and I want to introduce our next set of presenters. So Chris, if you can hang around for maybe 5 or 10 minutes just to see if any questions come through, that would be amazing. But thank you so much. That was a really awesome session and I was able to learn a ton from you. And seeing in our chat, especially in our People Geek Slack channel, that a lot of people are taking stuff away. So thank you for your time.
Welcome.